The sleek silver craft sliced through Earth's atmosphere with barely a whisper, its cloaking systems ensuring it remained invisible to human detection. Inside, Nira and Teller exchanged glances of mutual despair as their ship's artificial intelligence announced their imminent arrival. Approaching Earth landing zone. Punishment duration: 1 standard planetary rotation, approximately 365 Earth days, the AI stated dispassionately. Nira, with her iridescent blue-tinted skin temporarily hidden beneath a holographic disguise, sighed dramatically. 1 full year on this primitive rock, all because we borrowed a pleasure cruiser for an unauthorized trip to the Celeste Nebula. Teller, her naturally violet eyes now appearing brown, nodded glumly. The Council could have just suspended our privileges, but no, they had to send us to observe less advanced beings as a character-building exercise. She spat the words with obvious disdain. Their people, the Avarians, had achieved interstellar travel centuries ago and now viewed most other species as developmentally stunted. Humans, with their pollution, wars, and laughably rudimentary technology, were particularly underwhelming. The ship touched down in a dense forest outside a mid-sized American city. According to their preparation briefing, they would be provided with basic accommodations and identities that would allow them to integrate with human society while observing and reporting on human behavior. Remember, Teller said, reviewing their mission parameters, we are to cause no disruption to native development, maintain our disguises at all times, and submit weekly observation reports to the Council. Nira stretched, already uncomfortable, in her human form. I've studied their languages. Apparently we're in a region that speaks English. Shouldn't be difficult to master. The AI interrupted. Habitation pod deploying. This unit will maintain camouflage as a small cabin. Emergency beacon activated only in case of life-threatening situations. As they stepped out onto Earth soil for the first time, the aliens were struck by sensations they hadn't anticipated. The air was heavy with moisture and organic scents. Sounds of rustling leaves and distant animal calls created an unexpectedly complex auditory landscape. It's so messy, Nira observed, looking at the seemingly random arrangement of trees, underbrush, and scattered rocks. Teller consulted her. Wrist device. Our cover identities are prepared. We're exchange students from a small European country. We've been provided with the necessary documentation and background knowledge. The following day found them navigating their way through the nearby town of Pinewood Grove. Despite extensive preparation, the reality of human existence proved jarring. Humans moved with unpredictable patterns, spoke with wildly varying intonations, and seemed obsessed with devices that the aliens found hopelessly outdated. I can't believe they still use physical currency, Teller whispered, as they purchased coffee at a local cafe, a bitter beverage that humans inexplicably loved. Nira smiled awkwardly at the barista. Thank you very much for this brown stimulant. Liquid, she said with excessive formality, causing the young man to raise an eyebrow before moving on to the next customer. We need to work on blending in better, Teller muttered as they found a table. Remember what the punishment manual said. Actual immersion is the point of this exercise. Nira gazed out the window at humans going about their daily lives. 364 days to go. How hard can it be to pretend to be human for a year? Little did they know that their carefully planned punishment was about to become something far more complicated than either of them could have imagined. Pinewood Community College buzzed with activity as Nira and Teller navigated the crowded hallways. 2 weeks into their Earth exile, the aliens had established their cover as international students, sharing an off-campus apartment. In reality, their disguised ship stationed in the woods. Humans are so inefficient, Teller complained quietly, dodging a group of laughing students. Look how they cluster and block passage routes. On Avaria, this would be considered extremely poor spatial awareness. Nira adjusted her backpack, a cumbersome but necessary accessory for maintaining their cover. Remember our mission objectives. We need to understand their social structures. They had chosen different academic paths to gather broader observations. Nira had enrolled in humanities courses, while Teller focused on sciences. Their Avarian neural enhancements made human education laughably simple, allowing them to focus. It's on behavioral observations rather than actual learning. I'll meet you at the dining facility at midday, Teller said, checking her schedule. Engineering physics first. Their understanding of quantum mechanics is positively medieval. Neera nodded and headed toward her creative writing class. The classroom was small and arranged in a circle rather than the efficient rows she had expected. As she took her seat, a young man with tousled brown hair and bright green eyes smiled at her. "You're new, right?" "I'm Max," he said, extending his hand. Neera stared momentarily before remembering the human greeting custom. "I am Neera," she replied, shaking his hand and finding the physical contact oddly less uncomfortable than anticipated. The professor began discussing something called character development and emotional arcs, concepts that Neera found peculiar. Avarian literature was primarily informational and historical, with little emphasis on imagined scenarios. Meanwhile, Teller was experiencing her own cultural confusion in the engineering lab. The humans were working on a project using materials Avarians would consider suitable only for children's toys. The structural integrity would improve by 43% if you recalibrated the angle, she said to a student struggling with a bridge model. The student, tall with short dark hair and warm brown eyes, looked up with surprise. "That's actually exactly right. I'm Finn, by the way. Haven't seen you around before." "I am new, Teller," she replied stiffly, uncomfortable with the casual nature of human introductions. "Well, Teller, want to be lab partners? You obviously know your stuff." The aliens reconvened at lunch, finding the cafeteria overwhelmingly loud and chaotic. "These humans are so perplexing," Neera said, poking suspiciously at her sandwich. "In my class, they discussed creating fictional accounts of emotional experiences. What purpose does this serve?" Teller shrugged. "I met a human named Finn who asked me to be his lab partner. I accepted for research purposes, but their technology is so primitive it's almost painful to pretend not to know better solutions." Over the next few weeks, despite their initial disdain, both aliens found themselves increasingly involved in human social circles. Max invited Neera to a poetry slam, while Finn asked Teller to join a robotics club. "We should accept these invitations," Neera suggested. "Deeper immersion will provide better observational data," Teller agreed reluctantly. Their social bonding rituals are complex. Apparently, sharing activities creates friendship, a concept similar to our collaborative partnerships, but with more emotional components. What neither alien acknowledged was the strange sensation developing within them, a curiosity about these humans that went beyond their scientific observation mandate. There was something unpredictable about Max's creativity and Finn's determination that didn't fit their preconceived notions of human simplicity. 292 days remaining, Neera noted that evening as they filed their weekly report. "Yes," Teller replied, her thoughts drifting to the robotics meeting scheduled for tomorrow. "The time seems to be passing differently than expected." 3 months into their Earth punishment, Neera found herself sitting in Max's apartment, watching him paint. The swirling colors on his canvas held no technical precision, yet they captured the sunset over Pinewood Grove with an emotional resonance that made her chest feel strangely tight. "What do you think?" Max asked, stepping back from his easel. His hands were flecked with paint, a disorderly sight that would horrify most Avarians. "It's inaccurate," Neera said, then seeing his face fall, quickly added, "But it makes me feel like I'm seeing the sunset in a new way." "How do you do that?" Max laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "That's the point of art, Neera. Not to duplicate reality, but to interpret it through emotion. Emotion." The concept had been merely academic to Neera before coming to Earth. Avarians prided themselves on logical thought processes, with emotional responses carefully managed and minimized. Yet here she was, experiencing something that defied rational categorization when looking at splashes of color on canvas. Across town, Teller was having her own paradigm shift in the college robotics lab. The team was preparing for a competition with a robot built from what she considered scrap materials. "The power coupling keeps overheating," Finn muttered, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Teller bit her lip, restraining herself from explaining how a simple Avarian thermal regulator would solve the problem instantly. Instead, she watched as Finn sketched another design on a crumpled piece of paper. "What if we redirected the heat through these channels?" he suggested, pointing to his drawing. The solution was elegantly simple, working within the constraints of Earth technology. "That's actually brilliant," Teller said, genuinely impressed. With significantly limited resources, Finn had developed a solution that approached Avarian efficiency. That evening, the aliens met to file their weekly report. Their ship's living quarters, disguised as a modest cabin in the woods, hummed with familiar Avarian technology, a stark contrast to the primitive surroundings. "I've been noticing something unusual about humans," Nira began, organizing her thoughts. "Their creativity seems to serve a function beyond practical application. Max creates art that has no purpose except to evoke emotional responses." Teller nodded slowly. "I've observed similar phenomena in problem-solving contexts. Humans appear to thrive under resource constraints. Their ingenuity emerges most strongly when they don't have optimal tools." Neither acknowledged the admiration, creeping into their observations, but their report that week contained fewer dismissive comments about human primitiveness. The following weekend, Max invited Nira to a music festival in the park. The concept of gathering outdoors to listen to organized sound seemed inefficient, but Nira found herself agreeing readily. At the festival, surrounded by hundreds of humans experiencing music together, Nira felt something crack within her carefully. Constructed Avarian reserve. The collective joy, the shared experience of something so intangible yet powerful, created a sensation she had never known existed. "Are you okay?" Max asked, noticing her wide eyes and rapid breathing. "You look like you've never heard music before." "Not like this," she whispered truthfully. Avarian compositions were mathematically precise and appreciated intellectually, not with this raw, unfiltered emotional response. Meanwhile, Teller was experiencing her own revelation at a late-night study session. When the robotics team finally solved their thermal regulation issue, the celebration that followed, high fives, exhausted laughter, and spontaneous hugs, left her feeling strangely included in something greater than herself. "And we did it," Finn said, his smile directed at her with genuine warmth. "Couldn't have done it without you, Teller." The validation shouldn't have mattered. She was an advanced Avarian merely playing a role, but the warmth spreading through her chest suggested otherwise. That night, their report remained unfinished as both aliens lay awake, contemplating the uncomfortable truth forming in their thoughts. Humans, for all their technological limitations, possessed qualities that Avarians had engineered out of their society centuries ago: passion, spontaneity, and a connection to emotions that drove them to create and solve problems in ways that transcended pure logic. 202 days remaining, Teller noted. Nira smiled faintly. "Is it strange that I'm no longer counting?" A fierce summer storm battered Pinewood Grove, 6 months into the aliens' stay on Earth. Lightning split the sky as Nira and Max ran laughing toward his apartment, having been caught at the park when the downpour began. "We're soaked," Max exclaimed, as they stumbled through his door, dripping onto the welcome mat. Nira's laughter died abruptly as a sharp pain shot through her wrist. The holographic disguise module, the technology that maintained her human appearance, sparked once, twice, and then failed completely. For one terrible moment, she stood before Max in her true form, iridescent blue skin shimmering, large, almond-shaped, eyes with vertical pupils, and the delicate gill-like structures along her neck pulsing rapidly with her panicked breathing. "Nira?" Max's voice was barely audible over the thunder. His eyes were wide, but not with the terror she expected, rather with astonishment. She fumbled frantically with her wrist device, managing to reactivate the disguise. Human appearance restored, she backed toward the door. "I should go. I need to go right now." "Wait." Max reached for her hand, stopping short of actually touching her. "What just happened? Who are you?" Across town, Teller was facing a similar crisis. Her disguise was malfunctioning intermittently, forcing her to excuse herself from the robotics lab, where she and Finn had been working late. "I just need some air," she muttered, hurrying outside despite the rain. "Teller, you're acting strange." "Let me help," Finn insisted, following her out into the storm. "You've been different these past few weeks, more distant." The truth was that Teller had been withdrawing as she recognized the dangerous emotions developing within her. Attachment to humans was expressly forbidden by their punishment protocols. Yet each day, the boundary between research observation and genuine connection blurred further. "You wouldn't understand," she said, backing away as another spike of pain indicated her disguise was failing again. "Try me," Finn said simply, his expression open and concerned. Back at Max's apartment, Neera had reached the door when Max spoke again. "Whatever I just saw, whoever you really are, you're still the same person who discusses poetry with me for hours and gets unreasonably excited about ice cream. Please don't run." The sincerity in his voice made Neera freeze. In all her preparation for this mission, the contingency plan for exposure had been clear: immediate extraction and memory modification for any humans involved. Yet looking at Max's face, confused but not fearful, she couldn't bring herself to follow protocol. "You should be screaming," she said quietly, "calling authorities, reacting with fear." Max shook his head slowly. "Honestly, I kind of suspected. You weren't from around here. No one gets that excited about squirrels unless they've never seen one before." Despite the gravity of the situation, Neera found herself laughing, a genuine, unrestrained sound that surprised even her. By midnight, the storm had passed, but the aliens' crisis remained. They met urgently at their ship, both shaken by the day's events. "My disguise malfunctioned," Neera confessed. "Max saw me, my true form." Teller gasped. "We need to report this immediately. The protocols require—" "I didn't activate the memory modification sequence," Neera interrupted. "He wasn't afraid, Teller. He was curious." Teller's expression revealed her own conflicted thoughts. "Finn almost saw me too. I managed to get away, but—" She hesitated. "I don't want to modify his memories either." They stared at each other, recognizing the magnitude of their shared admission. 6 months ago, they would have followed protocols without question. Now the thought of erasing themselves from Max and Finn's lives seemed unbearable. 100. "And 82 days remaining," Teller said quietly. "What happens when we're supposed to leave?" Neera looked out the window at the Earth sky clearing after the storm, stars beginning to appear. "I don't know, but I'm starting to think we might have been wrong about humans being primitive." "Different," Teller corrected softly. "Not primitive, just different." Their decision that night, to trust their human friends, would change everything that followed. "So you're telling me," Max said slowly, "that you're actually a blue-skinned alien from a planet called Avaria, and you're here because you stole a spaceship joyride?" 2 days after the disguise malfunction, Neera had invited Max to their ship cabin in the woods. With Teller's reluctant agreement, they had decided to tell the truth. Now sitting in what appeared to be a rustic cabin, but was actually a highly sophisticated spacecraft, Max was taking the revelation remarkably well. "Technically, we borrowed the pleasure cruiser," Neera corrected, "and this punishment is considered quite lenient. The Council believes observing less technologically advanced species helps foster appreciation for our own evolutionary path." Max laughed, shaking his head. "You traveled across the galaxy because you got detention? That's both the most advanced and most teenage thing I've ever heard." His humor in the face of such a profound revelation was precisely why Neera had grown so fond of humans, of Max in particular. Where Avarians would analyze and categorize, he simply accepted and adapted. "May I—" he hesitated. "See the real you again?" Neera exchanged glances with Teller, who nodded slightly. Both aliens deactivated their disguises, revealing their true forms. Max's breath caught, but his expression showed wonder rather than fear. "You're beautiful," he said simply, causing an unfamiliar warmth to spread across Neera's blue-tinted cheeks. The following day, Teller invited Finn to the ship as well. His reaction to their revelation was initially more technical. "The power source for this ship must be incredible," he marveled, looking around. And how does the disguise technology work? Some kind of light-bending field. Teller found herself explaining Avarian technology, surprised by how quickly Finn grasped concepts that should have been centuries beyond his understanding. "So you've been studying us?" he asked eventually, his expression growing more serious. "Like we're some kind of science experiment?" "Initially, yes," Teller admitted, uncomfortable with his obvious disappointment. "But it's become more than that." As the days passed, their human friends visited the ship regularly. The four developed a routine, Max and Nera exploring human creative expressions, while Finn and Teller worked on projects combining Earth and Avarian technologies. "You realize we're violating at least 7 council directives," Teller reminded Nera one evening after the humans had left. "Revealing ourselves, sharing technology, forming personal attachments." Nera sighed. "I know. But doesn't it make you wonder what else the council might be wrong about? Humans aren't simple or primitive. They're just different. Their emotional intelligence, their adaptability, their creativity, these are evolutionary advantages we never valued." Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the ship's communication system. A message from Avaria flashed across the screen, causing both aliens to freeze in dismay. "Punishment inspection scheduled," Teller read aloud. "Inspector Morg arriving in 7 planetary rotations to evaluate adjustment progress." Inspector Morg was notorious for his strict adherence to regulations. If he discovered their friendship with humans, especially their revelation of their true identities, the consequences would be severe. "We need to prepare Max and Finn," Nera said, already reaching for her communication device, "and somehow convince the inspector that our time here has been standard observation without intervention." The next week was a blur of preparation. They coached their human friends on what to say if questioned, temporarily modified the ship's logs, and created elaborate explanations for any inconsistencies the inspector might notice. On the day of Morg's arrival, tension filled the air. The inspector's ship landed silently beside their own, its sleek design briefly visible before engaging its own camouflage technology. Inspector Morg was tall even by Avarian standards, with stern features and ceremonial markings indicating his high council rank. He surveyed the disguised ship with obvious distaste. "Punishment subjects Nera and Teller," he said formally. "I am here to evaluate your progress and determine if this punishment is achieving its intended corrective effect." What the aliens didn't know was that their carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. Hidden in Nera's quarters was a gift from Max, a painting of the 4 of them, human and alien forms side by side. And in the ship's laboratory, Finn had left notes about their collaborative projects. The inspection had begun, and with it, the moment that would decide not just their fate, but potentially the future relationship between humans and Avarians forever. Inspector Morg moved through the ship with predatory precision, his tall form stooping slightly under the cabin's disguised ceiling. His eyes, more deeply violet than most Avarians, missed nothing. "Your observation reports have become increasingly irregular," he noted, reviewing their submitted data on a holographic display. "Initial reports contained appropriate scientific detachment. Recent entries show concerning subjective language." Nera and Teller exchanged nervous glances. They had attempted to maintain professional terminology, but their changed perspectives had inevitably leaked into their documentation. "We've been adopting human communication patterns to better understand their social structures," Teller explained smoothly. "Immersive anthropological method." Morg made a non-committal sound, continuing his inspection of their living quarters. When he reached Nera's sleeping area, she felt her heart rate accelerate. Max's painting was hidden beneath her sleeping platform, but Morg was nothing if not thorough. "How you've maintained isolation from the subjects?" he asked, running a scanner over the room's surfaces. "Absolutely," Nera lied, grateful that Avarians lacked the human tell of blushing. "Minimal interaction, as prescribed by punishment protocols." The inspection proceeded tensely until they reached the laboratory section. Finn had been particularly interested in their atmospheric purification system, and his notes remained on a workbench. "What is this?" Morg demanded, lifting the paper. "These are human writing implements, and these notes reference technology beyond Earth's current capabilities." Before either could respond, The ship's proximity alert sounded. Morg immediately activated the external cameras, revealing Max and Finn approaching the cabin. "You have visitors," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Human visitors who appear to know exactly where to find your concealed ship." The door chimed. The humans had arrived for their planned meeting, unaware of the inspector's presence. With no options remaining, Nira opened the door, revealing the ship's true interior to Morg's shocked gaze. "Hey, we brought pizza for movie night," Max announced, cheerfully, then froze at the sight of the unfamiliar Avarian. "Oh, you have company." The following hour was chaotic. Inspector Morg demanded explanations, threatened immediate extraction, and severe penalties. To the aliens' surprise, Max and Finn stood their ground, defending their friends with unexpected eloquence. "You think humans are primitive because our technology isn't as advanced," Finn argued, "but technology isn't the only measure of advancement." "Your people may travel between stars," Max added, "but you've engineered away the very things that make that journey meaningful: curiosity, emotion, connection." Morg was visibly scandalized by humans speaking to him as equals, but something in their words gave him pause. "You are not afraid," he observed. "Primitive species typically respond to superior beings with fear or worship." "Superior?" Max laughed. "Different, sure, but Nira and Teller have been learning from us just as much as we've learned from them." As the confrontation continued, a remarkable shift occurred. Inspector Morg, trained to document and analyze, began asking questions that went beyond his official mandate. He seemed genuinely curious about human responses, particularly their emotional attachments. "You've known their true nature for months," he said to the humans, "yet you continue to associate with them. Why?" "Because they're our friends," Finn said simply. "Because when you care about someone, it doesn't matter where they're from or what they look like." The inspector turned to Nira and Teller. "You've violated numerous regulations. You've exposed ourselves to humans, shared restricted knowledge, formed inappropriate attachments." "With respect, Inspector," Nira interrupted, finding courage she hadn't known she possessed. "Perhaps the regulations are flawed. Humans aren't what we thought they were." "Look at what Finn and I have created," Teller urged, showing him their collaborative projects. His understanding of concepts supposedly beyond human comprehension challenges everything we've been taught. "And look at this," Max said, retrieving his painting from its hiding place. The artwork depicted the four of them, humans and disguised Avarians, side by side, but with a transparent overlay showing the aliens' true forms, symbolically representing the truth behind their friendship. Inspector Morg studied the painting for a long moment. In the emotional depth of the artistic representation, in the technical ingenuity of the collaborative projects, in the unwavering loyalty of these humans to alien friends, he was seeing something that challenged centuries of Avarian assumptions. "Must report this situation to the Council," he finally said, but his tone had shifted subtly. "This level of interaction with a developing species is unprecedented." As he prepared to depart, Morg turned to the humans. "Your species is indeed unusual," he admitted reluctantly. "Perhaps there is more to observe here than we initially believed." After he left, the four friends sat in stunned silence. Their secret was now official knowledge. The consequences remained uncertain, but something significant had changed, not just for them, but potentially for the relationship between two vastly different species from opposite ends of the galaxy. "Well," Max said finally, opening the forgotten pizza box. "At least we still have movie night." The simple statement, so human in its ability to find normalcy in the extraordinary, made all of them laugh, easing the tension of the day. 3 weeks after Inspector Morg's departure, the communication system chimed with an incoming council transmission. Nira and Teller had been living in anxious anticipation of this moment, uncertain whether they faced severe penalties or something else entirely. "Punishment subjects Nira and Teller," the formal message began. "After review of Inspector Morg's extensive report, the Council has reached the following determination regarding your time on Earth." The aliens read in stunned silence as the Council outlined a dramatic policy shift. Inspector Morg had submitted not just his official findings, but also a personal addendum, unprecedented in Avarian regulatory history, recommending a re-evaluation of human classification. Your punishment term is hereby concluded, the message continued. You are presented with options: immediate extraction and return to Avaria, or continuation of your Earth observation mission with adjusted parameters, allowing for authorized human interaction. Max and Finn arrived at the ship cabin that evening to find their alien friends in a state of conflicted celebration. "You're free to go home," Max said quietly after hearing the news, his attempt at a smile not quite reaching his eyes. That's great." Nira looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the pain behind his forced enthusiasm. On Avaria, such emotional transparency would be considered a weakness. Here on Earth, she had come to recognize it as courage. "Haven't decided anything yet," Teller said quickly, reaching for Finn's hand, a human gesture she had adopted without even realizing it. The council message had included one final section that they hadn't yet shared with their human friends. The preliminary findings from Inspector Morg suggested that humans possessed unique cognitive and emotional attributes that might complement Avarian capabilities. A limited cultural exchange program was being considered for the future. "The council doesn't understand yet," Nira explained. "But Morg saw something in you, in humans, that challenged everything we thought we knew." Finn nodded thoughtfully. "So what happens now?" The four spent the night discussing possibilities. Return to Avaria would mean advancement opportunities and comfortable lives for the aliens. Staying would mean continuing to navigate the complexities of human society with its messy emotions and unpredictable nature. As dawn broke over Pinewood, Grove, Nira, and Teller reached their decision. They recorded their response to the council, while Max and Finn waited outside. "We choose to remain on Earth," they stated formally. "We request extended observation status and volunteer as preliminary cultural exchange representatives." When they emerged from the ship, the rising sun illuminated their true Avarian forms. They had deactivated their disguises in a symbolic gesture of their commitment to honesty moving forward. "We're staying," Nira announced simply. What followed was perhaps the most human response of all, a tangle of hugs, tears, and laughter that would have scandalized proper Avarian society, but felt entirely right in that moment. In their final report to the council, transmitted before they integrated the ship's technology into their cabin to create a permanent Earth home, the aliens included observations that would forever change Avarian understanding of humanity. Humans exist in a state of beautiful contradiction, technologically limited yet boundlessly creative, physically fragile yet emotionally resilient, logically flawed yet intuitively brilliant. What we initially perceived as primitive is actually potential unfettered by our own self-imposed limitations. Their greatest strength lies not in what they can build or calculate, but in what they can feel and imagine, and how these capabilities drive them to create connections across differences that our species would consider insurmountable. We came to Earth as punishment and found home instead. Not because Earth itself is superior to Avaria, but because humans taught us something our advanced civilization had forgotten. That connection, what humans call love, transcends the boundaries of species, planets, and even the vast gulf of evolutionary divergence. As their transmission reached across light years to their homeworld, Nira and Teller stepped into their new lives. The council would debate and analyze their findings for decades to come, eventually establishing the first official Earth-Avaria cultural exchange program. But for two former punishment subjects and their human companions, the greater universe had already been irrevocably changed, not through technology or scientific discovery, but through the simple, profound recognition that sometimes the most advanced capability in the cosmos is the ability to see beyond difference and choose connection. In this way, humanity's unique gift to the galaxy began with four individuals who found something extraordinary in the ordinary act of choosing to love across the stars.